Hi everyone. Yesterday I attended the NRMA and New South Wales Government EV Fleet Day. There were great tips about charging and purchasing electric cars for local, state, federal governments and businesses, small and large, as well as lots of new interesting electric cars on display.
My name's Kynoch. I'm Ausgrid's Fleet Engineering and Strategy Manager. I've been leading its EV program. We've gone from 0 cars to about 110. We started in 2018. We had our first EV trial way back when, it feels like. We had two first generation passenger cars, very low range, a little bit clunky to operate, really didn't fit what we needed them to do, and they just operated as pool cars. From that, we kind of learned that EVs weren't ready yet, so we were on a really slow path of electrification. But we did go in for a batch order of 20 different models that were a second generation in 2022. Those were a lot better. We operated them again as pool cars. They had double the range. They were quite comfortable, and we found that actually EVs can really be kind of thing. The product was starting to mature, and we found very quickly that with the right vehicle, people started to like them or would take up use of them very quickly. In 2023, we've got a new CEO. He wanted us to expand the business. He wanted to unlock the city grid and really allow wide-scale access to EV charging across Sydney. Ausgrid's now got a target of 11,000 chargers in the next decade on Sydney streets, one on every pole in every street. From there, he gave us 6 weeks to come up with a new EV strategy. He wanted to see how much of the fleet we could electrify and how quickly we could do it. So we scrambled for a very short amount of time to come up with a way that we could pivot. And as you can see from this roadmap of ours, we went 180 degrees. And our target now is 900 vehicles in 5 years. We're already at 110. Late 2023, we started our mass charging rollout, and we also started to order a lot more vehicles. We bought our first truck, a 6-ton tip truck as a trial. We've now got 4 of them. We have an 8-ton flatbed as well. Then we went to mass passenger orders. We got 80 in one big go in the space of about 6 months. And now we're starting to go into the light commercial space, which is proving quite capable as well. Our strategy, 5 big pillars. Number 1 is safety. You'll hear a lot with EVs for people that really haven't operated them or driven them, but have heard that they explode all the time. There's such a fire risk. There's no way you can use these vehicles. They're really unsafe. It's just not true. In Australia, there has been a total of 8 EV fires. None of these have occurred while charging. None of these have spontaneously combusted. What does spontaneously combust driving down the street, particularly on the M1, every month there's a truck fire. Combustion vehicles have a much higher fire rate than EVs, but you don't hear that because it's not the story that is being sold. But we needed a vehicle that we could prove was as safe as our combustion fleet. Second part was capability. We had to be able to conduct business as usual with an electric vehicle. We didn't want people to be stuck waiting for charging, not being productive during the day. Cost is obviously a massive factor, and we have accepted the fact that up front you will pay a lot more for an EV, and you've got the extra cost of charging. That's understandable, but what that buys you is your environmental impact. Because a lot of companies now are under a lot of pressure to show that they're being sustainable, and there's additional incentive, particularly for large companies. If you're trying to raise capital and fund debt, you'll get a better rate if you get from your funds provider if you can prove that you've got sustainability programs in place. And that might be in the 1 or 2% range. That can be quite significant at the accounting level. Keeps your finance department very happy. And then we went into brand and reputation. Ausgrid wants to be seen to be pushing into the EV space. We want to lead the industry. We want to make sure we're telling people about it too. So vehicle selection for us, it's nothing new, right? I select vehicles the same way most of the fleet managers in this room. Safety is always up there, and cap rating is usually at the top of the list for most people. Thing to keep in mind with an EV, if your vehicle of choice has a combustion version, a hybrid version, and an EV, make sure the NCAP rating applies to your EV. It may not, it may be too new to have been tested. Generally, NCAP doesn't apply retroactively. The vehicle's usually tested in one go, and that's rated as is. Battery cells and chemistry is the new territory for fleet managers, and that comes into charging ability and charging rates. But no one ever talks about battery chemistry. I'm going to get a little bit technical here, but for fleet managers, this is kind of our new normal. It's things that we need to learn. Battery size is equivalent to your fuel tank. A 60 kilowatt hour battery is pretty similar to a 60 litre diesel tank. They're not that different. How quickly you can fill it comes into play from your charger. A slow charger, which is AC, that's your wall socket sort of stuff, will generally get between 2 to 3 kilowatt hours off a wall, or off a dedicated charger you might get up to 7, maybe 11 kilowatt hours. That's going to take you between 8 and 12 hours to fill that battery from zero. Thing is, most people don't fill it from zero, because if you're zero, you're stuck on the road somewhere. Generally, most people won't get below half before they want to fill up again. So your charging time is never going to be that long, because usually you're not going to get allowed to go down that far. Battery chemistry becomes a real issue, and this is where you can influence the fire risk, or more to the point, the perceived fire risk. Every EV battery is a variant of lithium ion. Most of our phones are all lithium ion batteries. Everything's lithium ion, and that's ION. There are actually 7 types of lithium ion battery, and there's 2 major ones used in vehicles. NMC is sort of the oldest standard. That stands for nickel, manganese, cobalt. It's perfectly viable, it's perfectly cheap, it's fine, it does what it needs to do, but it does go to a much higher temperature in the event of a fire. The second and the newer version is called LFP, and this is the one that you should really look for in your vehicle purchases. And that's lithium ion, as in IRON, that you use to make steel, phosphate. That gets to around 60 degrees in a fire. So you've vastly dropped your fire hazard by adopting that battery. I wish I'd known that before I went and bought 80 vehicles. But I learned that through researching and learning from what we've done as we've rolled out. Payload and range are obviously big factors, right? Range is the thing that everyone gets worried about. How far can I drive? Am I going to get stuck? As long as you can charge in plenty of places and charge quickly, you won't have that issue. But make sure you're selecting the vehicle that has a good range. You don't want to have 200 kilometers, you want the more 400-500 range. Payload, of course, if you like commercial and heavy commercial vehicles, really comes into place. And trucks, that's a big one. You'll sacrifice a lot of the mass that you would have for payload in a truck for the batteries you have to carry. And sometimes you can lose a couple of ton quite easily. And anyone here running a heavy fleet, you'll know how quickly that's going to influence your operations. Maintenance support is another one. There's lots of new brands on the market, lots of new makes that we haven't heard of before. If you're going to buy 50 of them, you need to know that you're going to have more than one dealership across the city that's actually going to be able to maintain your fleet. If you've got a regional fleet, are they going to have a presence to be able to maintain your vehicles? Those new brands are all great, but they have to have servicing arrangements in place that you can access. Or places like your Lubemobiles, your MyCars that you can access, your Ultra Tunes, you need to make sure that those providers you use have geared up for that as well. And of course, cost. Everyone here has quite a few cost factors in their fleet. Number 1 is how much you can spend on buying the vehicles, and number 2 is how much you spend running them. And usually number 3 is how much am I going to get back when I sell it. Depending on how hardcore your CFO is, you might have a lot of pressure in certain departments. You might really try to be getting your operating costs down. You might have a good budget to spend on vehicles. You might have no budget to spend. That's always going to come into it. One of your biggest factors is your initial rollout. The first time you buy your EVs is your charging piece. My encouragement is to put in the fastest charging that you possibly can, because your life will be 100 times easier. We've put in fast charging at every one of our depots. We can get someone in, charged and out within an hour every time, most often less than half an hour. 60 kilowatt chargers have changed the game for us, and it took away all the anxiety from our staff. That was a big one. Then you've got your other factors. Now, here is what I like to call the everybody's an expert on fleet one. I'm sure everyone here who runs a fleet has a bunch of drivers who are like, fleet's not hard, you just go and buy cars. You just walk into a dealership and pick one up. We've all heard that argument. We all know it's not true. There's a lot more to it than that. Brand recognition can be one. My preference for, I have to have a Hilux, no, I need a Land Cruiser, EVs won't work, that's your other factors, and that's your education piece. We'll get to that in a second. For Ausgrid, we've been a little unique in our charging ability because we've got the electrical grid in our backyard. We operate that, but we also have a lot of electrically minded staff. What we're doing at Ausgrid though is rolling out street charging across Sydney. So we want, as I said before, 11,000 chargers on streets in the next decade. Our main strategy is to roll that out so that both our staff and the public can access those, and our staff can charge at home. When they take their vehicle home, they get home, they plug in on the pole, they're charged overnight. I don't have to worry about charging too much. but that's still a program we're rolling out. That's going to take its time. In the meantime, depots is our big one. We've got 22 depots. Each one of those depots has one-to-one chargers for pool cars, so every pool car has a dedicated slow charger. Everybody else gets access to the fast chargers. And usually we've got 2 60 kilowatt very fast chargers in every depot. People are in, people are out. Hot tip, if you're putting in charging, don't put it in the corner of your car park. Put it smack bang in the middle. Because if you've got, say, these 2 seats of your car spaces, if these cars are finished charging, I can park either side, take that plug, put it in mine. Suddenly you've got 4 charging spots, not 2. We found that out the hard way because I put everything in the corner. Substations is another one. We have substations across the city. We've been lucky enough that we've got that property we can access, and staff who are working in those depots can charge while they work. As a last resort, we gave everybody a tag to access a public charging network. So that if you're in a bind and you have to really get a quick charge, you need some extra range, you can pull into one of those public chargers. The tag will activate it, bill back to Ausgrid, and the staff are back on the road. That's the last resort because your staff are not active. They're going to be sitting there, maybe doing emails if you're lucky. If they're tradies and not doing anything, they're not productive. So that's our last resort. The human element is without doubt the hardest part. Everyone here is probably a skeptic. I was too. Some of you will be like, yeah, I love EVs. Most people are like, I'm not really sure. I was adamant that EVs wouldn't work, and now I'm probably their biggest fan. But I have a lot of staff in my business that still don't understand it and are sure that it just won't work. Range anxiety is the big one. Most people don't actually know how many kilometers they drive. Most people think they drive a lot further than they actually do. We averaged out that our fleet drives 400 kilometers a week. I expected it to be more in the thousands, but when we really looked at the data, the vast majority were 400k a week. That's generally one charge. That's easy. I can do that. I can make that happen. Maybe 2 if people sort of get halfway and want to charge up, but it's not daily. If you've got a sales fleet or a trade fleet that's going to different sites every day, you'll definitely get that down. But our fleet is going to different sites every day. And we weren't doing nearly as many kilometers as we expected. Solving that range anxiety is probably the biggest hurdle for a fleet manager because most people will be worried that they can't do their job. Driving experience was another big one. Had a lot of users that didn't know what an EV was, didn't know how it worked, and didn't want to know. It just went, no, it's too hard, it's new technology. I found a lot of success if I got people into a vehicle that felt like a normal car. If you get into some EVs, it's a vastly different dash, it's different buttons, it's a bit sort of techie, and there's an iPad on the dashboard. I don't really get how this is working, I like it. But if they got into a car, it had a normal dash, it felt like a normal car, uptake was far easier and a lot less resistance. Tech fear. Don't these things catch fire all the time? Aren't they really dangerous? They don't work. I hear people break down. There's a lot of misinformation, and you need to test your fleet yourself. You need to run an EV, experience it to be able to solve those questions and know, actually, I drive an EV every day and it works really well. Turns out I charge up once a week and I'm back on the road and it's really simple. I've been personally testing one of our light commercial vans with a ton of ballast in the back, so I can say to our tradies, yeah, I've driven them around, it works really well. Actually, the range impact is pretty minimal. It works just as you would expect it to. So the more you can get past that technological fear and get people understanding that it's actually really doable and know that yourself, the better you'll be able to electrify your fleet. The 1% is the big one. Every fleet manager will have that one person who has that one reason that the EV won't work for me. Oh, I do this one job in the middle of nowhere once a year, so I can never use an EV. Well, actually, you can use it 99% of the time, and then maybe we rent you a car that one day a year, and that's it. That's problem solved. Oh, yeah. And suddenly those arguments go away really fast because most of the time people just give you bluster. They don't want an EV, they're not really sure about it, they haven't really learned. So you've got to figure out those 1%ers and drill straight past them. Sharing is caring. People don't like to share parking spaces. We found a lot of the time when people would park in, they'd sit there all day, take up the charger and wouldn't move on. So we had to really encourage people to charge, give up the bay. And make sure that your bays are signposted, make sure they're marked so you don't have a combustion vehicle parking in the bay and be like, oh, I don't know, I thought I could park there. If I put paint on the bay and it says EV, suddenly I don't get combustion vehicles there. If I leave it blank, everybody parks there. Go figure. Encourage your staff to share, encourage them to move when they're charged up. Make sure they connect their vehicle to the app that says, hey, the car's charged. Come and move it out of the way so it can be used by somebody else, especially your fast charging. Advocates is the big one. Everyone here will have drivers in their fleet who really want an EV. Get them into an EV straight away. Ask your people who wants one. Yeah, I'll have one. Great. Brand new car for you. Start using your EV. Take their car, give it to somebody else. Give it to the apprentice, give it to someone who needs another vehicle, who needs an update. Those people will spread that word of mouth so quickly, it'll get other people then coming and going, hey, I think the EVs are really good. Can I try one of them? Suddenly half that work's done for you. And that influence to get rid of the range anxiety, to get rid of the technological fear, that's all done by other people. Suddenly you've gone from 5 EVs to 10 EVs to 20 EVs. Ausgrid's got 1,500 vehicles, we've already got 110 in. I've got requests constantly for new EV types from people that have heard from their other staff that works really well. The key learnings, the logistics of your fleet is the most important thing. I've actually had to go vehicle by vehicle by vehicle to figure out how far people drive, where they go, and can I put them in an EV. If you don't get the logistics right, you'll struggle. You've got to really look at it in detail. Make sure the charging is there, make sure the turnaround time is minimal. Make sure you know where your fleet is going, what they're doing, what they need to carry. Are they in a cab chassis vehicle? There's no EVs for that yet. Okay, we're going to hold them off. But what we're going to do is we're going to concentrate on the bottom 50% that's easy. Don't go for the full fleet. Go for the first 10%, then the 20%, then the 30%. Start with your pool cars because they're the easiest. Your sales reps, they're really simple. Tool of trade, commercial, that's probably next. Heavies are at the top end of the spectrum. But get your simplest vehicles into EVs first, your easiest staff, your advocates, then work through the rest of your fleet. Don't try and change it overnight because it is a process. Find your advocates, but prepare for your detractors. Know the questions that they're going to ask. Know the statements where they're going to say, "Oh, I heard that Teslas blow up every 15 minutes." No, they don't. It's fine. You will get those, but work to push through those. Range is everything, but so is payload, and there's often a trade-off, particularly for heavy vehicles. In order to truck fleet, make sure you're looking at how far you need to go, how far you realistically have to travel, and what your trade-off is for battery minutes, because it can be significant. Invest in charging, and more importantly, minimize your turnaround time. Get people in, charged, and out, and it'll be 10 times easier. And then test, trial. Fleets love a good trial. Everyone here has trialed something just to see how it will go. Do that multiple times. Trial a pool car, trial a light commercial, trial a truck. Drive it yourself and have that personal experience so you can say to people, yeah, I've been driving a van all week. Oh, I thought fleet managers drove like Porsches. I wish, but no, I'm driving a van just like you. That will then allow you to have that first-hand experience to push past the detractors and turn people into advocates. That's been our strategy. If you'd like to know more, I'm available after this. We've got a tent down the back. We've also got a group plus ES who can help you with your charging needs. Come and have a chat with us. Thank you very much.